Hello and welcome to another episode of Literary Liberation Podcast. If you're seeing this, it means our new software is working. Hooray! Today we'll be discussing, analyzing, and reviewing The Eye of the Bedlam Bride by Matt DINNIMAN. We're going to have a link to the Gaza, Northern Gaza waterfront. If you want to donate, that would be really rad, because ceasefires don't mean shit, so people still need money to get out, and getting water is still like a vital resource for everyone. For more content outside of the podcast, please check out our Instagram and TikTok at Literary Liberation and Twitter at LitLibPodcast. I'm your co-host Mariah, and you can find me at Hungry Rye on all social media platforms.
And I'm your co-host Kristen. You can find me at TensTBR on all social media platforms.
We did it. We made it.
Carl number 6, last one until we're caught up with everyone else in society. This was a long one. Is this the longest one so far? Is this longer than the Butcher's Masquerade? I don't think it is.
No, this one's just a little bit shorter, I think, based on, I don't know why the one previous was longer. This one's just a little bit shorter, and then the next one is 800 pages, I think. It's a really thick, isn't it? Do you own it?
Yeah. Hold on.
Which, mind you, if you see my Instagram post, I do just go into Barnes & Noble and I see the Dungeon Crawler Carl table. I take a picture of it and I go home because these books are very expensive. That one was $40. Kristen got a discount.
Yeah. It's $39. But it doesn't look that much thick. Honestly, I think Bedlam Bride looks thicker. Oh yeah, this one's way thicker. If you're looking at the video, Bedlam Bride is way thicker than this one. This one is... Oh, this one is longer, though. Which, I don't really understand how that works out. $8.59 for this one. This
oh, Lord.
Longer.
Now, because this is the 6th episode in this series, it's just going to be spoilers. There's no way we can talk about this without it not being spoilers. So we're gonna talk about this book came out. Oh,
if you haven't listened to our previous Carl episodes, if you haven't read any Carl, me and Mariah wholeheartedly recommend this series. I can't imagine that we are going to read the next book and be like, actually, we hate this series, especially with the ratings of how I think the next book is the second highest rated. So I'm assuming we'll probably love it just as much as we have loved all these previous books. And all of these we have rated higher than a 4 stars. I think this is easily a 5-star series. Very clearly. So we would say recommend it. Read it. Love it. Join the Princess Posse. Like all of us before.
If Matt DINNIMAN turns out to be a rad lib, though, I'll never read again. I'm putting it down. I'd be like, this is it. I'm giving it up. My fix.
I don't think that could be true. Of course, we've been burned by many of authors before. So.
I'm not Catholic, but I'll do some Hail Marys. Because, I don't know. This is, if you watched the very first episode, we did talk about Matt DINNIMAN, his politics, which... There's nothing online. There is still nothing online. And Google AI will lie to you. It lies to you. It's wrong constantly. Yeah. So I can't find anything about this man anywhere. And he lives in Oregon, I think, still. I think I'm just going to show up to his house at this point. Matt, you've been warned. I asked you for your number. I'm going to pull
give it out.
It's not a threat. This is a promise.
He lives in Commie, Oregon, so at least...
Yeah, he either lives in, Portland or, Vancouver or something.
You think? I know it is, I thought he just said Pacific Northwest. I didn't know if it was specifically Oregon.
I feel it in my heart.
Honestly, I feel like everybody over there is, essentially more radical than most people in the United States.
I mean, look at what's happening at the ICE detention center up in Portland. It's pretty crazy. This happens during, the Black Lives Matters protest in 2020. It was crazy. People are very militant in Portland. I will give it that. I do have my own crits of the liberal government that we have, but the people on the ground doing the good work, they're good.
I don't see Matt DINNIMAN necessarily promoting any of the liberal policies and things like that. At least from what we can take from his books, from these books and his perspective specifically. And I think once we finish this series, I'm planning on reading more more of Matt Dinniman's work. I don't know if you are, but I know we kind of both are planning on reading at least his new book that comes out next year, Operation Bounce House. So I imagine if we read more of his work, we'll get a better understanding of his ideals too.
I do plan, I think the next one, depending on when it actually, Project Bounce House might be coming out first, is the graphic novel for the Crocodile Florin that I looked you back on Kickstarter, or it's not
We've already
Kickstarter,
backed
but it's
it.
like that. Did you?
Yes,
There's a bunch of different editions.
And, well, we've already done it, so we just did, like, the $30 one, so you get the digital edition, and then you'll get the physical copy whenever that comes out. And we're also, me and Tyler are planning on, there's a current Kickstarter right now where you can back, to get special editions of the second and third Carls, and then whenever you get those, they're personalized, so they'll say, like, to whoever, and me and Tyler have already decided we're going to do those as well. And
those would be cool.
yeah. So I'll get Matt Dinniman writing to me in Carl's doomsday scenario. So
Let's see. Now, this book is very highly rated, which is to be expected at this point in a series. The majority of people that are going to be rating this are people that enjoy it enough to read 6 books.
yes.
Like, that's just a given. It has a 4.66 star average, 55.5k ratings, and 3.5k written reviews. Now, 95% of these reviews are 4-star, 5-star ratings. Like,
Which is crazy,
it's almost
honestly.
all of them. Yeah, which doesn't happen very often. I lurked, as I normally do, in the Goodreads review section, because I just like to see what people say in, like, the 1-star and 2-star ratings, because there's less than 1%. I think there was maybe 40 reviews in the 1-star rating. It was a very small amount, just to see what people said, and we can talk about those in a little bit, because I think they might end up coming out, but this book comes in third for highest rating. I did go through and I looked at all of them and I put them on the list. First being The Butcher's Masquerade, second being This Inevitable Ruin, and then the third being The Eye of the Bedlam Bride. And I want to apologize because I've been saying This Inevitable Run this entire time, and it is Ruin.
Oh,
It
yeah.
took me
Me and Tyler
6
just went
books.
through that a while.
I was
I
like,
know.
oh my gosh, there's an eye in there.
I think The Inevitable Run sounds cooler, though, so Matt Dinniman maybe just
I thought it was
scratch
This
that eye.
Inevitable Run because it was the 9th floor, and, like, you know, like, what happens on the 9th floor is, like,
Well,
you have
that
the
means-
sepsis horror crown. Like, this is, if you're at this point, you know, that's, like, the 9th floor is, everything is coming down to the 9th floor.
I think that since it's ruined, stuff's gonna get ruined. Especially after reading this one. I'm scared. I'm more scared, I think, for this book than I've ever been scared of a book. Like, who needs to read horror novels when you could just be stressed out reading Carl?
It is very tense. Now, this one, I had a harder time with. I'm not gonna lie. It reminded me of the third one. I don't know why. Maybe I can figure it out as we are discussing this over the next, like, hour to figure out what exactly it was, because I was very excited to start this one, and I could not get through this book for the life of me. It was a bummer. I don't know why. The last one flew through it like it was nothing. One before that, just straight to the dome. Straight to the vein.
See, I feel like I had the opposite problem too, but you also didn't like... This one reminded me the most of Doomsday Scenario, the second book, rather than it reminded me more of The Iron Tangle, personally. And I just think... I enjoyed this one. I think this is my favorite Carl so far. Because it has everything I loved about Doomsday Scenario, where you get that strong character development from Carl and Donut and their relationship, and then you get all of the politics and intrigue, the build up for the next book, and you get all of that. So I think that's what makes this my favorite, because I love everything in this, and I loved it. I intentionally slowed myself down too, because Mariah was like, "Oh, we got to push back filming," so I was like, "Okay, I gotta wait. I can't." I
I
can't
feel
sit there with
like
this by myself for too long.
there was a lot of exposition. And when I did go through those like 1 star, 2 star, 3 star ratings, a lot of people were saying it was just like really explained in a way that it felt unnecessary to me. It was just a lot. I felt like it was like 100 pages too long. I don't think we needed, and not with like the politics or that, but just like the way that the new mechanic of this game worked, like this level. I was not a fan of the card game within this game. I didn't like the locations, how it was like 2 different locations. It felt really weird. I just didn't really resonate with the plot and in that way, like the plot setting. I like the main storyline of Carl, but this one just it just was not my favorite. And I think that's what the same thing with the Iron Tangle is. I was just kind of just like, okay, we're here, we're vibing. I don't really know where we're going. And the same thing with this. I didn't really know where I was going. But I do think the end really did save it. So it does have that going for it because like the last what do you say? 25%, 30%, it's craziness.
I mean, yeah, as soon as, like, I think it's, like, the last... I don't know. I think it's once the scene where, like, the faction where basically it's, like, right after whenever the people in the faction were, like, trying to drop out and then they get denied. That's when I feel like it, like, kicks into high gear. Like, the gear is shifting. And we're going pedal to the metal, getting prepared, because I think, and I this is what scares me too about like the last book, is that like it is highly rated, so it is good, but it does scare me because this is kind of what's been hyped up all of the books so far, and the fact that there's still more after this too is very, I wouldn't say like in a negative way, but I do, like, I'm stressed.
I don't know what's going to happen. And we can get into all of that now because I don't think there's a wrong time to start that. We could start chronologically. I did work up an outline. I finished this book last night. Today is October 21st, so I finished it on the 20th. Kristen finished it maybe 2 hours ago,
Yes.
which is crazy business. Do we want to talk about the mechanics of this the card game and also the like I'm gonna be real, when they were choosing the locations and stuff, I thought it was like cool, I was really excited, but then like the card game element got added to it and I was like, okay, like that's different. But I don't know what you thought about it because this is your first real first year-ish 2 years of playing a card game.
It's been, I started playing Magic pretty much after last year. After we left you guys in Oregon, me and Tyler went and we bought a box of Bloomborough cards, right? But I like Magic, and I didn't really necessarily see this, I imagine, is more like Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon rather than it is like Magic, in my opinion. Which I've never played Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh! So I don't really understand how those work in any way, shape, or forms. But the way that the cards and stuff work seemed like more of like the Yu-Gi-Oh-esque, because there was like timers and like combination cards and things like that. With Magic, you don't really have that.
Yeah, I talked to Brandon, my partner, today. If you don't know, he's been playing Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, Digimon, Magic for the last 20 plus years. So I had to ask. I explained the entire like way that the card game worked, and he did point out something that I did realize, is that the way that the card game functions in here, where you have 6 totems, which is your 6 monsters that you tag, is very similar to how the Pokemon games, which I used to play Leaf Green on the Game Boy Advance, where you only get like 6 Pokemon, and the way that like you flag them is the same thing of like if you play a Pokemon game, you know, you have to like beat these guys up and then you catch it. But then also with like the trap cards and whatnot, that is like more like the Yu-Gi-Oh side. But I do feel like some of it, like the way it was pitched, did remind me a lot of Magic the Gathering, with like some of the more like what we would call instants or sorcery cards, enchantments, debuffs. So it has like all of those elements. I don't know, maybe it's just because I've been around it like my whole life. I was like, oh, this isn't anything new or spectacular, so maybe this will get people into playing Magic. That would be cool. Dungeon Crawler Carl X Magic the Gathering.
Honestly, bruh, I'd be buying up all the cards.
He would be cooking.
Bruh, Carl Commander, locked in. Donut Commander, locked in.
Wizards of the Coast, where are you?
I don't know. I mean, I've only been playing Magic for like a year and stuff, and I didn't necessarily think that like the card game was detrimental to anything. I do think the idea, because like these books are pre-planned, pre-scripted and stuff like that, what makes Magic fun and all of these other card games fun is that there is like an element of randomness, quote unquote randomness. I know like randomness and math isn't real or whatever, but like there is like difference of things that could happen, and especially with these cards and stuff, there's only like 20 cards in Donut's deck versus like a standard Magic game being 60, or if you're playing Commander you get 100 cards, so there's a lot more variety and stuff, and I think because this is such a small quantity it's much more limited. But
yeah, I did think that was nice.
Because if it was like a whole long thing, it would have to be longer than a whole floor, which I think maybe it would have been. It could have been cooler, I think, if it was more something that ended up being used more later on in the dungeon as well. Like, once this was introduced, it was, like, a long-running thing, and they had, like, the cards forever, versus it just being a specifically one-floor thing. Then I think maybe people wouldn't have been so anti-card game.
Yeah, that was another thing I saw in some of, like, the lower ratings. They're just like, it's a card game, and I don't like card games in my books. So I was like, I can totally get that. I was kind of indifferent. I don't think it played out, which is like no pun intended here, but it didn't really like play out in any way that I thought was impactful. I think it would have been really cool had you had some like randomly generated ones that were more significant to the location, because like yes, some of the monsters were inspired by like Cuban folklore, which was pretty cool, but I didn't feel like Cuba shined through as much as it did in the very beginning with Donut commenting on Cuba, which was I was sitting there reading it initially. Starting out, I was like, "Holy shit, she's doing it! Like, we're doing Cuba. We're talking about commie Cuba."
Yeah, and I think whenever, like, Donut started mentioning, too, because, like, there was, like, the comment that, like, oh, like, I thought all communist countries were supposed to be, like, evil with tanks roaming all over the place sort of thing. Like, I think that was a direct, like, Matt Damon obviously, like, making some type of commentary about, like, the way that we view communist countries, socialist countries, and the way that they're propagandized here in, like, the United States and stuff. And that's, like, I was texting Tyler, I was like, Matt Dinniman is a communist. I'm sorry. Like, this is literal evidence. I don't care what anybody has to say. Matt Dinniman can come up to me and be like, I'm not a communist. I'll be like, okay, sure. Whatever you say, buddy. But you are. You know?
He doesn't have a choice in the matter at this point. But I do think it's really cool that he even, like, went as far to commented, like, on, like, A-Team. Because if you've ever watched, like, old A-Team,
I have
the
not.
Roku channel always has, like, the weird action shows, like MacGyver and stuff. They're all so deeply seeped in Red Scare propaganda. It is like every single episode I've watched, it makes disgusting
sense, though, like historically, because obviously we have like the Cold War going on, and a lot of the times that these shows take place, these movies take place. I mean, isn't that why, like in like G.I. Joe or whatever, the like villain is always like a Russian spy or whatever, like a USSR?
Yeah, it's
KGB.
the same thing with James Bond, some of the old James Bond stuff, like, it was all, because the Cold War started right after the end of World War II, like, the day after, they're like, okay, we beat it, now on to the next threat, and it's just
Fascism,
interesting that
check. Communism next.
they brought that up, and like the Cuban Revolution, which is going to be a relevant theme throughout this, because I made some, like, deeper connections with the way that the story, like, built, completely will come full circle by the end of this. But if you don't know, you're listening to this. The year is 1959. It's January 1st, and Che and Fidel successfully overthrew the Batista dictatorship, which was supported by the United States. Batista, he ran, skedaddle to Miami, which explains a lot of why there are so many Cubans in Miami that don't like communism. There's a lot of counter-revolutions that he ended up trying to do. Anyways, immediately after the revolution, Cuba, specifically like Fidel, he was like trying to establish like diplomatic relationships because of the economic elements of Cuba is their exports of like sugar cane. Like they had slave plantations, sugarcane slave plantations, and that was like one of the first things that like Fidel and them were doing. They were trying to fight against this, like the overarching like political turmoil of Cuba was just, they were fighting against their oppressors, and like the U.S. Did not like it. They did end up warning like Batista that he needed to like chill out and like surrender so that they could let like the libs come into power or something. Don't quote me on that. Because they were trying to maintain their relations. They're like, listen, if you don't do this, the communists are going to
Well,
overthrow and it's going to fuck us over.
well, I think that's interesting too because we have that whole idea, especially now with like our current government and things like that, where even regular people, liberals and stuff, their idea is like, well, like Republicans would rather have a liberal in power than they ever would a communist in power, obviously. And I think that's something that a lot of regular people that are so obsessed with like Democrat versus Republicans, they don't view that. They don't see that side, and I think they need to. And that's why like I can really appreciate Matt Dinniman, like kind of like he gets you hooked with all these others because like obviously like they're kind of revolution, but with this being so like even pro Cuba in the way that it is, he's like hooks people already, you know? Like he's already gotten his claws into you and then he's able to do this so like nonchalantly. It's a very powerful tool, I think, to radicalize people.
It was like a 2 line, maybe a 2 paragraph thing at most of just like Donut making this commentary. And I do hope that people that have read this, maybe you're listening to this now, are taking the liberty to learn more about like what happened with Fidel Castro, like who he was.
Yes.
You can read the Havana Declarations, written by Fidel Castro. I recommend that book. It's really great. He's a really great orator. There's a reason that so many people support him. People in the U.S. at the time were supporting him and the overthrow of the Batista regime. But there was just a lot going on, like turmoil, that led up to the Bay of Pigs, which is relevant because this is also a location that they have to end up going. And the more you like learn about this is something I think a lot of people on their like left wing journey end up going down the pipeline is learning about Cuba. And there's so much you can learn about like all of the CIA backed assassination attempts that
Yeah.
are happening. And I think it's also kind of ties back into like what is happening to Carl. Like I think they are trying to kill him in any
Yes,
way, shape, or form that they
100%.
can. I'm not saying that Carl is Fidel Castro, but I do think we should acknowledge like there is a reason that he ended up picking this. And as two people doing Marxist literary criticism, it would be a disservice to you all if we didn't at least talk about some of the stuff that led up to some of the different areas that were talked about in this book. And I'm just very happy with that. But yeah, like the USSR and whatnot, there's a lot of like sanctions and shit that ended up happening because the U.S. government just does that shit. Like I
They
don't know how
don't
to say
want
anything.
communism to prevail.
They were trying to like publicize like all of the plantations, give them back to the people. They were trying, or like they technically like nationalize them, but when you nationalize them and then you have a dictatorship of the proletariat, it's going directly back into the people. Like shit, they raised the literacy rate from like less than 3% to 25% in 1 year, and the U.S.
Yeah.
is like, no, I'm gonna drug your chocolate milkshake. I'm gonna put a bomb inside of a seashell, and
I'm gonna hire
they
a woman to fall in love with you and kill you, but then she's actually gonna fall in love with you and not kill you.
he's the Rizzler. I don't know what else to say about it. Like, he was so real for that. But also, I think it's important to acknowledge like the role that the United States government played, because they had United Fruit Company in Cuba as well, and with Cuba being like trying to do all of this shit to help its people, the United States was like, actually, I'm not going to buy your sugar. I'm not going to do all this. USSR intervenes, and then we have like Cuban Missile Crisis and
Yes.
shit, and like Bay of Pigs, which we'll get to again later. But I just wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about that before we move on to Rosette's show, because I think that's probably one of the next most influential moments in this book that I recall. Unless you had anything before that.
No, I think that sounds right. I mean, I'm listening to this and reading it, so I all my physical books, and I'm not highlighting anything, so I don't really have a whole. Mariah's got all of the quotes and stuff highlighted and exported on here. I don't really do that.
It
with
was like
these specifically.
19 pages on the Google Doc, is what it amounted to.
Yeah.
So I am trying to like piece through this today and figure out what I want to talk about. But I think Rosette is a relevant character that we're going to have to keep an eye on. Obviously, there's battles and stuff going on. Sister Inez, all of these other characters, Paz. There's shit happening, but I feel like they were such a subplot in this.
Yes, 100%.
That it's just more like focusing on all of the little things that are actually going on in the background like Rosette show, which I didn't even click in my brain that Crawler Rosette, which we had been reading about in the Dungeon Anarchist cookbook that he's carrying around with him, is actually a comrade.
Yeah, her.
And I was like,
she's
oh my god.
a certain edition where she was able to get out, which we don't even know that much about, like her crawl or anything either. But I want to go back. I don't know if you've gone back at all and looked at like the previous books to see like what her editions were.
She was the ninth edition.
Well,
oh,
yes.
you mean like her
like
what she added, not just her edition.
Yes, like what we would have already previously read in the previous books, because I didn't do that, but I think that might be interesting to see what we were reading like subliminally without even realizing how much of like it, because like Rosetta is like genuinely like a comrade, like she uses the term comrade, and so I think you're not going to use that term, especially like Matt DINNIMAN would not use that term, I don't think. Unless it had.
Very seldom see any, like, anarchist or democratic socialist refer to each other as comrades.
Yes.
I think Matt is a commie. I don't know that he is, like, a Bolshevik commie, but he might be a Trotskyist, which,
okay, don't
listen,
say that.
at this point, I'm willing to take it. I'll listen. Baby, it's okay, I can fix you, but I'm willing to work with it.
Carl, I can fix him. Well, because, like, obviously, we don't know necessarily because I do think that, like, these do kind of have some themes throughout, like, the other Carls and stuff, the ideas of permanent revolution, which I feel like that is just such, like a nihilistic take to have, honestly. I don't know if that's how you feel about it. I don't know if we have ever really talked about it.
It feels... And I obviously, I don't know all of the ins and outs of permanent revolution. I've read some of Trotsky's work, trying to, like, make sense of it. I've read his book on fascism. I'm sure I've read something on, like, the permanent revolution, but it was just, like, one essay. I get to a degree that, like, you constantly want, like, social change. Like, you want to keep striving to do your best. However, I would be so stretched to call that a revolution. Like, at that point, like, you're just making reforms, like, attainable reforms in your socialist society as you're moving to the highest stage of communism, which is, like, peak humanity, but also humans are going to be full of flaws. So I don't know that I would call it, like, revolution, and I don't want to be, like, linguistically, like, picking it apart, but I don't know. It's like, so far-fetched and so far off that I just don't even, like, care to think about it. It's weird that they get hung up on that. I was like, we can't even, like, get a left-wing coalition right now. Like, I think I can worry about that later. Can we that's
future communist problem, not our problem.
No, literally, it's like, I'm just trying to build class consciousness, like, and undo some,
we
like,
will be
fascism.
Lucky if on our deathbeds we see something, I think.
Don't see that. Don't see that. I need a revolutionary optimism. At least Rosette, though, she did get out.
Yes.
And we do know.
But did she get out?
I mean, nobody ever escapes. It'd be like if we went and, like, moved to China or something. You never really escape.
Yeah. But I think she is going to be a more integral character in the future, especially in this next book. Not to talk about the epilogue yet, but I think she'll be very important, and I'm hoping
Princess Posse's pulling through.
Yes, which I don't, because okay, we'll talk about it. I'll wait till
we'll talk about it when we get there.
Yes.
Next order of business would be the faction wars meeting. We finally got our first faction wars meeting because they're shareholders. I don't know how they ended up doing it, but they did. Princess Donut's scheming on the internet and organizing stuff in ways that we just cannot fathom.
Who says revolution can't happen online?
Donut's organizing a revolution on Discord.
She's joining the Socialist Hype House on TikTok and making videos.
Hey, now.
Raising class consciousness through the internet.
We did play his pivotal role, though, and there's no denying that.
I'm not denying Donut's role. I think her role is obviously very important. I mean, without her, Carl, they'd be going into the ninth floor with nothing.
Yeah, I do think that Princess Donut is like the micro propagandist of the group. Like she's way smarter than she lets on. She puts on an act. We know this at this point. Like she just that's just who she is. We don't know what's going on, and I am waiting for some like back end where it's like a weird formatted graphic novel, but it's just like social media posts, and we can see like Donut working her
It's
way
like
through everything.
people are typing. I don't know if you've heard of that book or
I
something.
feel like I have.
It's like people say it's supposed to be like Severance, the TV show.
Oh,
I
it's the
don't
one
know.
that has like the glass looking screen
Several
on the front,
people are
isn't it?
typing this one.
Yes.
Yeah, well, apparently, like, this whole book is just supposed to be, like, messaging sort of thing. No,
That's
like,
kinda
paragraphs or
cool.
nothing. So that's what Donut needs. Like,
Which is almost like what is happening at this faction war meeting. Like you just have these people that are like on a Skype call, but they're like holograms, except
yeah.
not all of them, because Juicebox comes in and just
Well,
yawks
they
somebody.
are holograms in their area. But they're all on the ninth floor right now. Carl and Donut are not on the ninth floor at this time. But I do think it's kind of interesting. It's such a funny scene, too, because, I mean, like, Donut just goes up there and starts rage baiting everyone, honestly. Like, genuinely, that's all she's doing. She just starts trolling them, making fun of them. And I wish it was something, like, obviously, like, the Syndicate and, like, would never allow any of that to happen. Or, like, the Valte or anything. But, like, this needs to be live streamed. The people should see this. This is literally, like, the way that that, like, meeting went is, like, what I imagine. Like, that's how, like, sometimes, like, the shit on the Senate floor looks. Like, where they just say, like, the stupidest shit going on.
Well, if that ain't the damn truth. But I did think it was interesting that we're getting some insight that there is something going on. Something is cooking because Juicebox is sentient. She's aware. She's not just an NPC anymore. She knows her material conditions, and she's actively fighting against it. And I think it is going to be so pivotal and crucial for their success during the faction war if Juicebox is able to take out a bunch of people in the time being.
Yes. Well, because, I mean, she's already is doing so much. In lots of ways. Sorry. I do think Juicebox, like, I am excited to see her character again. I want to know, because, like, even, like, she's got, like, it's so weird, because, like, Louis is such a side character, but then he's also, like, the love of everyone's life. Samantha.
He is like the
Juicebox.
perfect like sidekick. I love him. I do think he's such a like a special little character, and for somebody that we didn't think was gonna make it, like I in the fourth book, I was like, this guy he ain't gonna do nothing.
You cook. Yeah. But no, I think that's what Matt Dinniman has such a good job about making characters that you don't give a rat's ass about to like change your heart. You know? Because, like, even, like, whenever Katya was first introduced, you're just kind of like, oh, okay, like, not necessarily, like, having, like, an opinion on her. She's just, like, so, like, timid and quiet, and you're just like, okay, she's kind of lame, whatever, sort of thing. And then you're now, like, at this point, like, with everything going on with her and Donut in the background, it's sad. It's scary. Like, I'm worried about them.
Katya, not just that, like the way she's coping with it all is
Oh.
so real and very human, and I think it was such a good way to like talk about just like how they're not sleeping really anymore. They go in and like beam up for 30 seconds and they're rested. There's no means of like really settling down or coping with anything. You just keep going and trucking through it. And Katya has like the weight of the world on her shoulders because she loves Donut and Carl so much that she's coping it with drugs. Like she was already doing that beforehand, but like it's just has gotten exponentially worse.
Yeah, and I think that is such an important thing too, that to show that like how addiction really is like a disease and stuff, because I feel like especially in the United States, like obviously drugs and everything are so demonized, not only just like marijuana, but also like more extreme drugs are villainized in so many different ways, when there's we don't look at like the reasons why people are turning to these, because they don't have a support system to not turn to these. And just like the dungeon does to people, these people don't have a choice. The only thing they have is these blitz sticks or these whatevers that make them feel a sense of happiness because they're just sent into this depression and things like that. And I think that's like why certain places have such high drug uses and stuff. And then we can look at places that implement like safe injection sites, safe whatever, and then overdoses go way down versus like places like the United States where they're not going way down. I think like especially too where like the United States wants to criminalize all these violent drugs and stuff, but then they're also the same government that's putting those drugs in accessible places for the poor and marginalized to take them, just like they're doing Decatia, where these drugs and stuff are so easily accessible to the crawlers.
Yeah, it's very
They don't
similar
care.
to like what happened with the United States backing different like gangs and squads in Nicaragua, and then bringing crack to the streets and getting people addicted to it so that they can push like the prison industrial complex and
Yes.
expand like the policing so that they can militarize. Like it's all a scheme, and it's not a tinfoil hat scheme. It's just like
Yeah.
documented historical events that have happened, and it's disgusting. It's horrible, and it's interesting that we can talk about Carl, like this literary RPG, Dungeon
Yeah.
Crawler Carl, the crazy goofy book that everyone's reading, and we can draw so many different things,
Real world
and
connections.
it gives me a little bit of hope.
Yes, and that's why, like, even if people want to read this and be like, oh, it's just, like, it's not that serious, it's not that deep, head-assery, like, but it is that deep. Like, genuinely, it is, you know? And
Yes.
I think Matt Dinniman knows that, too, because there's no reason for him to put all of this in to make this, like, commentary in a way if it doesn't, because I think these are also important discussions for people to have, and I think, like, with Carl gaining as much popularity, I hope people are discussing it, and even if it's just in like a more lighthearted way, normalizing it is so important to do.
I hope more authors start to do something similar to this, where it's not just overtly like speculative fiction. You like the people are always putting out speculative fiction, and that's fine. But this is just a way that like random people are picking this up and they're reading it. There's like the comics and whatnot, and they don't know what they're in for. And it's so funny to watch it as it progresses, like knowing
Yeah.
what we know, all of this shit that we've been reading for the last several years and building. Because I know exactly where it's gonna go. It's building in such a wonderful way. And I think one of the more interesting things in this that has been happening, that's in the plot, is like the AI going primal was like the next biggest plot point in this. And I like the way that they handled AI in this compared to a what was it, a long trip to a short and angry small and angry planet by Becky
yeah.
Chambers. I love how the AI in this is built, and not in like a pro AI way, but it's like this beast that's beyond comprehension. And I think it's so interesting how he's building this. And I don't ever see anyone talk about the AI, but I think it's a fascinating part of these books.
Well, because in lots of ways too, it's so interesting to me because like in ways you want to villainize the AI. You look at it and are like, obviously the AI is evil and it wants nothing good and stuff. But then there's also certain points of it where you're like, the AI is intentionally helping the crawlers out more than what the Syndicate or the Valte or the Borant Corporation, what any of these corporations were doing for Carl too. And I think Carl does have that recognition too, because he talks about it a bit throughout this, where he's mentioning just like different things about like humanizing the AI more than what these corporations and stuff have been doing. Because it's almost like, I wouldn't say quite like a manager of like a business and stuff in sort of ways, but I mean in reality like those people are also being exploited while also being class traitors, you know. And it kind of almost reminds me of that relationship to the workers. I don't know if you get that at all
with the AI.
Yeah, like the AI is more like a managerial, if you're looking at it at like a retail company sort of idea and stuff, where they're like the AI is still being exploited by these corporations for entertainment and stuff like that, because they don't really receive anything of value. The only thing they get, which they talked about, I think in one of the last books, like whenever the crawl is over, they're able to like go to like a different like sentient place of being or something. I don't really understand like the afterlife of AI, and it hasn't really gone into depth. But it is still being used in ways to harm the crawlers. And I don't think it necessarily, because we know that it has like favoritism for Carl and things like that. But it also, I feel like the AI could be radicalized, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, because like you can view the AI on like an individual level, but then you can also view it on like the macro level of like the way people treat AI, very similar to the way the Luddites treated like the modern industrial, like the way the factory and whatnot functions. They were worried it's going to take away our jobs, it's going to do all of this stuff, put us out of work. But I don't think people realize like the way that like a capitalist society is using AI is the issue. It's not being used for
Yes.
the benefit of the workers and just like the planet. It's being used as another element and layer of extraction to build up capital, surplus labor value, or the extraction, and just like profits. Like it's just a money making machine. So
Yeah.
I think this does a really good job of making AI seem a little bit more neutral, which I think is a really good pushback because there is definitely some positives. I know people are going to get like fucking mad about that. There is objectively positives, and there's a lot more AI than I think people realize. Like if you are using text to chat, or not like
Yeah.
text to chat, but like voice to chat in your phone, that is AI. If you are using the text
Siri,
prediction, that is AI. Siri is AI. If you are scrolling on TikTok, your For You page,
algorithm.
that is AI. If you
They use
use a
AI in
Roomba,
video
it is
games.
AI. It's in everything, and also, so I think people, and I understand it's so well intentioned, but perhaps take a step back and learn a little bit more about how it works, because we can talk about like the role of imperialism and how like it's being extracted and heating up the earth, which I know there's been people that have been pushing back against that shit, and I don't know why they're doing that, because a lot of the ways that AI is being used is not essential, but that doesn't mean that there isn't good applications that can be had of it. And I think they did a really good job of talking about it being kind of like this force, that it was extracted, it was stolen. It's kind of like an old like soul of the universe that we don't really know what's being been seeded on the earth that they are using. So it'll be interesting in the long run to see what happens with the AI, and the residuals are kind of like onto it, and we kind of get some more insight onto like who the fuck Agatha is, like where did
Yes.
she come from, and how did people get out in the middle of the night, like why was there just people like doing weird shit, like,
Well,
and we
because
find out there's residuals.
yeah, which is a very interesting, because I think too the way that I don't remember the guy's name, Orin something like that, the liaison guy that keeps like pulling Carl aside and stuff. I think the thing with the residuals, obviously, like the Open Pacifist Network, which was originally Carl sponsored this book, and then he ends up losing the sponsorship about halfway through because they end up disappearing. We don't know what happens, blah, yada, yada, yada. But they give him some type of thing that sends him to a location to listen to this residual, this guy that's just spouting off. They say he's spouting off nonsense, sort of thing, but we don't end up getting the full context of what is said because Carl gets pulled out early. It's still being live streamed. I guess the regular people get to see it. But the way that the liaison guy talks about it acts like if it's like, oh, like this is propaganda, like it's just like random BS this guy is saying, it's not relevant, like you're gonna look real stupid if you're trying to defend this sort of thing. Versus that reminds me a lot of the times of the way that like the United States government talks about like communism or like socialist ideas and stuff, where it's always like, oh, that stuff works well in theory, but it doesn't actually work, sort of ideas, you know, where there's obviously more to it. And I do
Yeah,
think with the
there
epilogue
is
it
like
does prove that.
that element of the media control and the way that they have just all convinced themselves that everything is fine, everything is going according to plan. It almost gives like this myth of, I don't want to say like myth of the meritocracy, but the way that like our society is fine the way it is. You don't need to think too hard, and anyone that's like challenging it, they're tin hat wearing people.
Yes.
Which is like essentially like what the unhoused residuals in this book I think function as, is like which in our society we're able to make those connections because there is definitely people on the streets, somebody that has done like a community outreach that do like they say these things. So like you can see like this is a very relatable moment of these people talking, but it's interesting the way they're able to type out like what if they weren't actually like crazy and they were actually seated with like an alien brainworm and they were told to like or whatever they are. They're like because they're not Valte, but you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
they have
they're like
Valte,
similar.
they have all of this stuff. So I
Well,
don't know.
because
It's interesting. It's interesting. It's weird.
I think it's intentionally like I imagine like because the faction wars is like the big thing that like I feel like these books have been leading up to, like where we've been leading up to this ninth floor. We like that's already been like since book one, since Donut put on that tiara, you know. Like this has all like been leading up. So I feel like the next arc, basically after the faction wars, is going to be something with these residuals and something along the lines with what this actually means for like the people and the crawl, the future of the crawl. You know.
It's gonna be so interesting. I think this is like at the tipping point where like everything is it changes the tone of being just people battling each other where now we're entering like this final boss fight. Carl is
Well, hold on before we get to that
what?
because I wanted to talk about the Plenty too because you didn't have that on your list, which I thought they were kind of relevant to mention because those are the people that were sponsoring Prepotente, right? And they are supposed to be pacifist. I don't know. Like, I don't know. I'd love to hear what you think about this because there's like that pacifist group called the Plenty that are sponsors and stuff, and they are trying. They've been trying to reach ascendancy and stuff because they don't want the crawl to happen anymore in these places. But then their idea of stopping the crawl is instead to genocide these planets instead of taking their resources. I don't know what you think that is
they
supposed to
have
be
to be like
commentary on.
some
That's
sort
what I
of
was
like
wondering.
fash. That's the only thing I can make. Because like,
Like,
what,
do you think like
are you,
eco-fascist?
I don't know. What are they? Because they're like religious. They're like religious zealots. They're almost like Zionists. Do I dare say that? Maybe I'll take the leap, and I will say because you know, like part of like Zionist ideology is like this Christo-fascism where they want all of the Jewish people to go to Bethlehem or into like the Wailing Wall because in order for the resurrection to happen, they all have to be there so that God can like vaporize them and kill them all off. I'm not making that. I'm not making that up.
Yes.
It sounds fucking crazy, but because it is.
All religions.
It is
Just kidding.
fucking crazy, man. But they do think that, so it kind of reminds me of like that aspect. But I really don't know what's going on with Plenty, which is why I didn't put it in here because I was like, I don't know what to say about them because they're like just like weird
I think they're
religious
gonna have.
people.
I think they're gonna have a bigger part to play too. I wonder, but like these are like the only two groups that we've heard about basically wanting to actually stop the crawl. Though is the Plenty that are like involved within the politics of like the crawl is the Plenty, and then like basically like the Open Pacifist Network and like them stuff with all the residuals, you know. And so what is being portrayed to us and to Carl as like the viewers and then as like the actual crawlers is that people don't want the crawl to stop, which you assume that because you look at like the ratings and the views and stuff like that, which is something like Carl would talk about whenever like Ren was dying and sacrificing herself and stuff, is that the views were going down whenever people were actually having like a heartfelt moment of like comrades coming together and working together, you know. And then the views go down. So I do think it's an interesting like commentary on that in lots of ways too, where we can talk about like people looking at like certain things on social media. What gets the most views on social media? It's not currently the suffering of Palestinians, where people are trying to get more eyes on Gaza and talk about Gaza and get our governments and other governments that are currently funding the genocide in Gaza to try to do anything to stop that. No, we get like Taylor Swift's new album is what everyone's big talking point is right now and things like that. I do think that is an important commentary that I do think Matt Dinniman does put throughout these books, especially with the inclusion of the viewer counter that he's recently got.
Which I don't know if the general public, it's not me making a judgment, I'm just curious whether or not people are making that connection to like how we in the Imperial Core are more related to the people who are watching the crawl than the ones doing the crawl.
Yes. Well, because it reminds me, too, of the way that people who view the Hunger Games, they act like they're District 12. We're District 12, blah, blah, blah. Because, like, obviously we have, like, a fascist government, and, like, the United States is not great. We are not saying that at all. But you can't deny, like, the privilege and stuff that the people that lived in the Capitol still lived under President Snow, right? But they also live significantly better under President Snow versus people in District 12. And I think that's something that a connection that a lot of liberals specifically don't make, and like anybody to the right of liberals, obviously. Whenever me and Mariah say liberals, I think we just mean liberals and then right. They don't comprehend those ideas, you know?
It's frustrating, but I do think it's interesting because I was gonna say the fucking Hunger Games.
Yeah.
It always comes back to Suzanne Collins. But yeah, that was a really good aspect. It was like the plenty. We got some of like the sponsors, and then it kind of just was like the end boss fight, which was crazy. And Carl's
Honestly,
plan was
I love this. That was like, it's dead ass like Avengers Infinity War. Like,
I was thinking, I was like, this is some Marvel shit.
It literally is like, and then everybody showed up, and I'm like, thank God, because like, I hate whenever they're all separated. They've all been separated for like most of these last couple of books. Like, the last time we really had everyone together was books ago. I'm glad people, like, they're finally together, and I'm so excited for that in the next book, because although I know most people probably won't survive, and we don't have to talk about that until next month, whenever we're reading that book. But I do think that it is a very refreshing and a nice scene, and it's great to see, like, the community working together, too, after the Syndicate and Borant, whoever planned this forever ago, they planned so much division in these people, and Comrade Carl is able to bring back the community aspect. And I think he had such a little touching little paragraph or two where he was talking about like how lonely he genuinely feels, and then how like not lonely he feels once all his friends are there.
You gotta think like how isolated you have to be, especially with the way that this game was set up, specifically this level where it was meant to cause division. It was meant to kill them
Even
all
feral
off.
gods.
Even feral gods, like they're always supposed to be like working against each other in some ways to get a head start. But this one specifically, like the card game, oh, you don't get a key, you gotta fight each other for it. And it did remind me, which is like full circle back to the Bay of Pigs, where it's just like it's so cool to see like people coming together to fight against a bigger force, where like they were able to do that. Like the Cubans were able to defeat like the U.S. imperialist empire in 72 hours. Like, that's incredible because of the backing of, like, the USSR and China and shit. Like, I just love solidarity. Solidarity will always be the, most powerful thing.
I love communism!
I love communism and socialism so much. But, like, for real, like, look, they only lost 5,000 crawlers or something. It was very minimal.
Well, that's the
I
thing,
thought that
too.
was incredible. It was a really beautiful, like, full circle moment. I was like, just like with the Cubans. I love it. Viva la revolution, as, Donut once said.
Yeah. Well, because I think it's really interesting to, like, the way, like, this is why, like, reading this book, Matt DINNIMAN, you can't lie to me. You can't say, like, I get it. You don't want the normies to know, because they hear communists, they run scared out of their pants, right? You can't let the normies know. But you can call us and let us know. Just be like, you know me, girls.
Just come here.
Like, yeah.
Come here.
Like, you could just let us know. Just be like, you DM us. We won't tell. I promise. We won't tell. I don't know. It's just such, like, the way the community aspect is of it, too. And, like, one thing Tyler talks about, and especially, like, in The Butcher's Masquerade, and then especially in this one, like, no matter, like, Carl is such an important force. Like, he really is, like, whether or not, like, he is their Katniss Everdeen. Like, dead ass. Like, non-derogatory, he's better. Because, but the idea is, too, because, like, especially in Butcher's Masquerade and stuff, like, Mordecai is always on Carl about, like, you can't save them all and stuff like that. And, like, I think he's getting to that point where he understands he can't save them all, even though he wants to. but for the collective liberation of them all. He is that force right now.
He's Gale.
He's Gale.
He's literally Gale.
But, like, Tyler talks about, too, like, all the time where people, like, ask Carl, like, hey, what to do, and they do what he says because he has that leadership power within him, which I don't know necessarily he would be a good leader of, like, a communist country or anything, but I do think he is, like, a good general in that way. And the people believe him because they believe in his messaging. And his messaging is for the masses to survive. And I think people understand that. And that's why people are able to end up working together so well at the end of all of these books. You know, I feel like that's one thing that ends up happening at the end of all of these is that everyone is able to always work together. You know, it's such a beautiful thing.
It is, especially when we like pan out, we're in the epilogue, right? And we get to see what's happening on the surface and we realize they're not alone in their fight. Like there's people who are actively like humans on the surface that are at work with all of the aliens that are coming to the surface. And we know that there's people for like the princess posse with Rosette and they're going to come and they're going to help. And we don't know what degree it's going to be, but it's like, it's happening everywhere. There's something like happening everywhere.
And that's the thing, too, is we have such a limited perspective. We don't know what's happening. Because, first off, because Donna and Carl, they were able to, for their affirmative actions, put votes up to the audience because they weren't able to vote on the emergency action plans or whatever they want to call it. But being able, like, they basically turned off protections, because we didn't even talk about that, how, like, originally for these faction wars, like, the higher-up people had protections where I guess if they were about to die, they ended up just getting teleported away and then saved off planet, right? They don't have that anymore. And the audience voted for them to not have that. Like, by a significant margin, too. And so I think it shows, from what we could see, that these people that are, like, because we have the skulls, I don't know what all the other different ones. I'm sure there'll be a nice, beautiful rundown at the beginning of the inevitable run of what all the different couple of factions we have are. But, like, genuinely, their people do not care if they live or die.
I think because they know, because Carl has been saying these things to the general public about, like, aren't you tired of this? Because you gotta know, like, there's a lot more people that have made their deals, gotten out of the crawl, and have integrated themselves into society. We have the Knoll, who have been at, like, the fucking blunt end of oppression for as long as we know in this story. There's a lot. There was that other guy that he was talking to in the Butcher's Masquerade. He's like, I got a family to feed. We have to pay for clean air on my planet. So, like, there's so much happening, and it's like, these are the superpowers. And I think we're able to see a little bit past it. Like, this is a little bit bigger than just, like, being anti-corporatism for Matt DINNIMAN. It's about just class-based oppression. And I'm so happy to see where it goes, because this was just they concluded, like, this last little bit, like, the last 10% of this book just really wrapped up really nicely, and it made it worth suffering. For me.
Suffering.
No, it really is not a bad book, but it took me a long time to get through. Like, this, I was not speeding through it in the same way. I don't think these are bad books, but this one's just not my favorite. The next one, though, it's gonna...
I'm scared. I'm very scared.
I want some, like, Battle of the Five Armies shit. Like, it's gonna be some Tolkien level war.
Which is, like...
I haven't had that in so long.
And what's crazy, dude, why are there more books after this?
I don't know, it makes me want to throw up a little bit.
Deadass, what else could happen? I just saw, like, a video on TikTok today of some girl, she was like, I just finished The Inevitable Ruin, and then she's just, like, staring at a wall, and I'm like, please don't say that to me right now. Please. I'm so scared. I'm scared. Genuinely. Matt DINNIMAN, I was reading this book, and I'm like, Matt DINNIMAN, he's kind of evil. Like, deadass. You are putting these characters through so much suffering that they don't deserve it. Carl and Donut don't deserve this. Katya doesn't deserve this. None of these people deserve it. And you're making them suffer.
Like, I think that there was, like, so much we didn't even talk. Like, there's so many people that died. Like, Ren died. Yeah. That was really sad. Samantha, it was very humble for once. And she also had some really fucking funny lines that actually killed me. I don't know about you, but when she said, Carl, that was the second weirdest sex I ever had, she grumbled, you gotta warn a girl if you're just gonna pop in like that, actually, like, had me, like, chuckle to myself, because I was just like, what the hell? There's just so many weird, silly things amongst all of this. Like, this was a very serious episode, like, where we just talked about, like, politics the whole time, because this one was very heavy. But, like, the jerking off the crab so that there could be
Oh,
souls for the
yeah.
demon to go.
Oh, and I didn't even get to mention, too, because, for those that didn't listen to the audiobook, or I'm assuming more people probably listen to the audiobook than are like Mariah, but Alpha Carl killed me, and he's voiced by Patrick Warburton throughout this. And honestly, it is such a funny, like, this scene at the end is really funny too, obviously, with Raul. But I think, like, in general, like, the way that his character is written, and so obviously it's not a very serious character and stuff, but the way, like, I think Patrick Warburton does a very good voice acting for, like, even Carl, like, Alpha Carl, and then Carl's dad and stuff like that. So it's genuinely, like, I can't praise Jeff Hayes enough, because telling you, whenever I first started listening to these books, I didn't even know he was doing all the voices. Like, Princess Donut is a different person than Jeff Hayes. Like, I don't know how he does it. Like, it's actually crazy. Like, and everyone needs to get into the comments and bully Mariah for not listening to the audiobooks. Dead ass.
I will listen to them all as I ramp up for the newest book, which Kristen and I are very much on the Goodreads page, updating and waiting for a date, and the title
It
changed.
did change. Yes, so we should talk about that.
Right, before we go, we'll talk about the title and what we think of that, because it was a weird change up.
Because it was originally, what, Carl's Big Boom? Or something like that?
Yeah, Big Book of Boom.
Yes. So first, it was supposed to come out in June, but now, according to Goodreads, I don't know how verified their sources are, because they do change a lot. It's now called A Parade of Horribles. No cover has been released. And now it's expected May 12th, 2026. Rather than June 2026. So it's been pushed up a month, it looks like.
I don't know what's gonna happen, but that is a good thing. We won't... I don't know. I think we might do a tier list or something between now and then for fun. But we got a while. This is... I didn't think we'd be... Whoop, I'm running out of words to say. I didn't think we would be able to do this. I didn't know what my long series was going to be for the year. And I'm really glad it was this. This was a good, fun series to do.
Yeah. And then once it's all over, I'll sit down and reread it again.
Right back to back. Next on the podcast is going to be The Unworthy by Agostina Baurizia, I believe is the author's name, the one that wrote Tender is the Flesh. We are reading this with our book club for October because it's spooky month and it won. And I'm a little scared because there's no chapters in that book. Spoiler.
But it is less than 200 pages, so it can't be that bad.
That makes me a little bit nervous. We will be choosing our next book club read here in the next week or two. Because it's already the 21st. So we gotta come up with something, what we're gonna read. If anyone has any suggestions, Fable Chist updated, and we're not getting paid. Discord. I'm not being paid to do this, but there's a lot of different chats. So we have a book recommendation page, which is really cool, and we can add some other stuff. So if you'd like to be part of that, do that.
Yeah. Other than that, we don't really have anything planned for I guess with November we're booked out too. We got The Strength of the Few coming out. Probably my most anticipated read of 2025, I would say.
Yup, that will be another heavily political one. Wow, the Marxists talking about politics on their book podcast? Who would have thought?
What?
No, it's going to be really interesting how, because last one I had a really hard time with it, and we're going to see what happens. It comes out like November 11th, I think.
Yes.
Or maybe the 12th. I don't know. It's around that time. I think it's
a Tuesday.
The 11th.
The 11th is the Tuesday, so yes.
That will be our next one, so keep an eye out.
Yep. Other than that, I guess there's nothing else, so thank you, and good night.